we're told we have to do this, or you can't rest.
For
You know,
sure.
you're lazy if you rest. You're
Mm.
lazy if you take time out to do this. So it's just that reprogramming.
Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. In this episode, you'll be meeting a very special woman on the podcast. In fact, many themes in her story will likely sound very familiar and I'm sure are going to resonate with a lot of women. And today, Kirsten Duggan shares her story. For many years, Kirsten was working and living in constant states of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. She was working long, unsustainable hours that ultimately left her feeling exhausted, depleted, and resulted in a full body burnout. In Kirsten's words, I wasn't living, I was barely surviving. Now, although there were many long, dark days, life is now very different for Kirsten. With time, support, and learning the powerful nurturing practices of breathwork and meditation, Kirsten has completely transformed and she's healed her mental, physical, and emotional well-being. What is even more special is how those dark times have given rise to such bright days now. And today, Kirsten is a breathwork facilitator and mentor so that she can share and educate these incredible modalities with others. This is Kirsten's very special story of how she's redefining her midlife. Enjoy. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast, Kirsten. It is so lovely to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jo. I'm excited to be here with you. It's very special.
It is really special because I met you a few months ago at a wellness retreat. And after spending some time chatting with you and hearing your background story, I knew that you were someone that I would love to have on the podcast. Now, your story is both inspiring and very relatable to so many women. And I know this is your first podcast we're actually sharing your story on a podcast. So I really appreciate both your bravery and your vulnerability to share the low points and the difficult times in your life. But your story has a happy ending, which is great because it's not all doom and gloom that we're going to be talking about this here. It's just talking about how you've processed and gone through certain things and times in your life. But before we hear all of those stories, we'll get a little bit of context and learn just a bit more about you as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So to find that out, we start right back from when you were growing up and what your earlier years as a child and teenager might be like. So can you take us back to those days?
Yeah, of course, Jo. Thank you. I'm very honoured to be a part of your podcast. This to me is, as I said to you earlier, it's nice to be able to share our story in the event that we can help somebody through the same process, because I think we've all got our own stories and that way we can relate. You know, you don't feel alone through this whole process. So I am an identical twin. I've got a family there's 5 siblings and mum and dad, and I was born in Hornsby and then moved to a country town in northern New South Wales, a little place called Muswellbrook, where I spent majority of my years there, schooling through there. I was into sport. I love sport, netball in particular. And then I went off and did my beauty therapy degree. So that's basically went back into my hometown and started working in a business there. And yeah, a wonderful sort of childhood growing up. My mum and dad and my brothers and siblings. I had a lot of connection with my grandmother who lived in Maitland. So a very loving family and very close sort of connected family. So yeah, we had very many special times, lots of camping. We used to camp quite often with cousins in particular. So we had, great memories and great times together as a family.
Oh, that sounds pretty idyllic, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So was your career path quite clear to you? Because in our chat that we had before the podcast, when we were talking about the sorts of things that we could discuss, you mentioned to me that you started your own business at the age of 19, and that is a massive step at that
Yeah.
young age. So was that a dream you followed, or how did that actually come to be?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a dream. It was something that, to be honest, being an entrepreneur now is something that I love. But back then, when I was 19, I really believe in the universe leads us in and out of paths and leads us in a direction that we're meant to. So I'd come out of my beauty therapy degree and then was working in a place that no longer she shut down. And then I was moved into my own business and it just evolved. So I then spent the next 23 years working in my business. So it's interesting. I loved my business. I've always loved to be of service and to help other people, and in particular women, to feel good about themselves. I think that's always something that I've loved to do. And I love people. I love connecting with people. And community is really big for me. But so me creating my own business felt like a little community for me. So I'd really loved that. I loved to be able to nurture and nourish and support women through, and we became, through that 23 years, a lot of my clients then became friends. So it's a very intimate, relaxing, beautiful space. And I think creating that safety, people would come in and share stories and their vulnerabilities. So I think I've always had that sort of connection with people that, we just connected on a level. And then as a therapist, that being a beauty therapist in this case, it was beautiful. So a lot of beautiful connections, and still to this day, I keep in contact with a lot of them, which is beautiful.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That must have been like, obviously over 23 years. You said that you had the business for 23 years. During that time, you married, had children. Yeah. So how did you manage all of that?
Well, my husband, we met when we were 18. So that was a very special time for me. And we've been married, just gone 30 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
So, yeah, it was a big milestone. Special. It is a big milestone, but he's been so supportive through my whole process and journey through life, with being a dad, being a husband, being, that person that sort of, I think we work as a team, Jo. Yeah. And I'm grateful to have that. And life, you just got to work through, it's not all roses and everything, but I think that's what you share through. So one thing I found during my business is the business that I do now is very, very different and structured very differently to what I did back then, because I never really took much time to be with my family, purely because I relied on my business to be, providing for my family. And in saying that, I loved my business, but it was very much hands-on. So clients relied on me for my service. So it was sort of didn't give me a lot of freedom in life. And that's why I'm doing life very, very differently now. So, and that's why I came to 2012 selling my business, because my kids were growing up and I wanted to be mum.
Yeah.
I was missing out on so much of their life that I just went, you know what? I actually need to now. And I feel as teenagers, like my son was 12 at the time, my daughter was 15, they really needed me. So, it was the best thing I ever did. So,
Well, you'll never get back, isn't it? Like you sometimes think of the busyness of those years, but yeah, you made a great decision there. Not that your children would ever say that they would have needed you being teenagers, but you know just how important that influence is.
Yeah, and it's, I want to be there. I wanted to be. I think they're the memorable years. I think that's where they remember mum being around, whereas when they're little, I mean, we had a great family unit. My mother and father-in-law were very supportive, and my mum and dad were very supportive. So we had a great little, support network with family. And my twin sister, we shared and looked after each other's kids. So what we had was, it worked. Mm-hmm. I wanted different things. My values had changed, and I just wanted to be a mum and be more, spend a bit more time with them, have more freedom with them. So it was very hard to sell my business, But it was very much needed, Joe. It was probably the path of my next, the next part of my life, next part of the journey, which was, it's been, very different, very changing.
Yes. I'm sure the skills that you learnt back then has no doubt helped you in what you're doing now. And we'll talk about what you're doing now in more depth as we get further into our conversation together. But I'm sure nothing is wasted, is it? The experiences that we've had in the past, we can always learn something from them.
I totally agree with you there, Joe, because I believe they're all life's lessons.
Yes.
Everything that happens, I believe everything happens for us. I've always been, a believer of even the most challenging and most difficult times, and you'll know about this in my story, is I now look at them were my life lessons. They were my a way to move. I was so unaligned to the life that I was living to now I'm living the most aligned and fulfilled life. So it was moving me out of, what wasn't serving me.
Yes.
So I know that now.
Yes. It's that horrible messy middle where it's not easy to get through, but once you're on the other side, you look back and just are so grateful for those teachings. Yep. So from that, you obviously the children started to get a little bit older, so they may not have needed you as much. You went back then not into your own business. At that stage, you were working for someone else. So how was that after being your own boss, running things the way that you wanted to? Like, what was that transition like for you then going back into the workforce?
I think I loved it, Joe, because it was a matter of, and to be honest, I went both next two roles were management roles. So I was still sort of doing very similar to what I had done in my own business, but I loved it to that point of that I could go home and switch off and be a mum and be a wife and do the roles that I wanted to. So it worked for me in that time. So, and I just loved the change. I do believe as humans we have to change. And, I look back through that and go, whatever happens, happens. I just let it evolve. And it was interesting. Looking back, I always tried to control things and sort of, you've got to make it happen this way. And I look back and think, no, I actually didn't. I just let these things happen. And I got a job as two managers one in a jewelry shop and one in a day spa. And I loved them both. But interesting how life sends you on a different journey, on a different path.
And so what was that then? Because obviously things didn't turn out exactly how you imagined they were going to. And when you were talking to me a few weeks ago, that you were saying that the stress from the workplace that you were in really took its toll on you and you hit rock bottom at that stage as far as your physical and mental health goes. So what was the lead up to that and why do you think that may have happened?
Yeah, I think I can share with you a lot of it is about, and I think women fall into this trap of having too many hats on. And I was a perfectionist. I'm not now. I've learned to understand that it's okay to be imperfect. Things don't have to be perfect. And I think that's another thing women are conditioned and people in society have to think it has to be done perfectly. I was a bit of a people pleaser. So instead of allowing people to do things, I was in a position where I just felt, there was so much overwhelm and so much pressure and stress that I was working 60 plus hours a week in this particular role. And I was working harder than I did in my own business. And I remember my husband saying to me, Kirsten, you're working harder for this than you were in your own business. But I had 25 staff. I've always felt like supporting everybody and filling their cups. And I didn't fill my cup, Joe. That's basically what it all come down to, the stress, the anxiety, the pressure. I was living such a disconnected life. I was living in survival. And I really do believe my body was like giving me the warnings, giving me the signals. But because I was so, the hours that I was working was just ridiculous. Then I'd come home and be doing work that I wasn't completing at the business because of the time frame. So it got to the point where my body was, I had anxiety and I had insomnia, and to the point that my body just broke. I was so broken that it was like, I look now and go, that was the biggest gift. Because I'm the type of person, and I think the women fall into this pattern of, it's okay. I just keep going, just keep pushing, just keep doing. I was so in my masculine energy and looking after everybody else, and I was last to look after.
That sounds very familiar with parts of my story as well. Yeah, and I know other women are going to be listening to this and hearing that in them and their own story as well. It's so common.
Yeah, it's very common because I think you see it with, I see all the women in my life, and I hear it with my clients where they've got to believe they have to be doing everything. And I very much stepped into a lot of feminine energy, which I never ever, I felt guilty for, Jo. The fact that you think as a mother or as a wife that you can slow down.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm doing life very, very differently. But that burnout was the biggest gift, because I learned so many ways or so many things that led me to that. I've totally, completely changed life. So my mindset, the way I'm now thriving.
I was so wonderful.
I look at this and I see women doing it. They're barely surviving. And I did that.
So many years of behavior, isn't it? It's ingrained. So it's unlearning all of those sorts of thought processes, concepts of and beliefs of what you think it should be looking like, and then creating something that is feeling really good for you.
Yeah.
And it's going to look slightly different for everyone as well, isn't it? Like, it's not everyone's going to be following exactly what you or I have done, or, someone else we might know.
I think it's this very much the social conditioning, though. Like, we're told we have to do this, or you can't rest. You're lazy if you rest. You're lazy if you take time out to do this. So it's just that reprogramming. It's the removing those limiting beliefs. It's the whole thought process.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission. But also, I believe, Jo, with a lot of this is our own, giving yourself the space and the time is an act of self-love.
Yeah.
Because I do believe, and I was one of those, I never, ever loved myself enough to go, you're worthy of this. You're worthy of this time to rest, to be a mum, to just, because the other thing is too, how we behave, we're modeling this to our own daughters and sons and grandchildren. So that's what I've sort of gone, gosh, they watch me do it.
To be honest, for me, I never, when I was in the throes of all of the doing, I'm busy, I've got to do this, and I'm wearing all of these hats. It never occurred to me that that whole concept of worthiness, that came far later, when I had time to stop and really question a lot of the things, because we were sold a story that, I remember the stickers at school, girls can do anything. And then you were told, yeah, you can do anything and you can do everything that you want, but not all at the same time. And I think that was the part of the story that was not really explained to us. So our generation of women, all of these opportunities were open to us, whereas our mothers never had the same opportunities that we did. So we seized them, we took them, we had to show everybody what we could do, but that comes at a big cost.
Yeah, and that's the thing with it, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So tell me then how the healing came. So you sort of started to mention about that. So what sort of things did you do? Because it doesn't happen overnight. This obviously was a process that took some time for you.
Correct. So my first probably practice that I got into, and my dad was one of the ones that sort of introduced this to me, was meditation. And I wasn't consistent enough with it to begin with. But because I looked up to my beautiful dad so much as well, that I just thought, oh, Dad does it, I'll give it a go. And then, so what I did to begin with, Jo, was I was left with 2 autoimmune conditions that basically led me to where being a beauty therapist and always presenting, I always like to dress nice and do my hair and makeup. Well, there was a period of time I had no energy to do any of that. I barely had energy to get up and eat breakfast. And I share this purely because I know there's a lot of women out there. So I was diagnosed back then with the chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. So that was a very debilitating time of my life when I look back at all of that and go, that was the universe saying, you need to stop. Because I believe since doing all my certifications with breathwork and all these other bits and pieces, it's led me to understand your body's communicating always. And it led me to become still, to find stillness. And it's not about quiet, it's about finding stillness and giving yourself the grace to heal your body. So meditation was the first. And then I went into the path of personal development via a friend. I went into essential oils as well. That was the next thing that I went into, essential oils to support my body. And Jo, I must say everything that I've incorporated into my healing process has been in some way a holistic way of healing my body. I've always been very much about high values and integrity with my body, looking after my body, always have done. So I've been very mindful what I put on and in my body. So I went down the holistic path and I went into things that are science-based because I wanted to have, and these essential oils was the first meditation. And then when I got into personal development, I actually started connecting with women, all different ages and all different diversity. But I met a lovely lady in my first mentorship mastermind class who was a breathwork facilitator. She had chronic fatigue syndrome. And we just connected. And she's a lot younger than me, but I then did breathwork for the next 2 years, every fortnight. It completely changed my life to the point that I just went, I actually need to teach and share this with people. Because what happens is that time of my life with all that trauma and, I believe just, as I said, things happening, we actually need to process those emotions because I do believe I know this for a fact that through life that we're never, ever shared or allowed to process or express our emotions. And those activations that we store in our body need to come up and we need to recalibrate that energy that we hold in our body. So breathwork was a way of me starting to heal my body and it's been life-changing. Yeah. So transformational. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you're teaching other women. So you went through some forms of certification to be able to teach other people.
Correct. Yeah. So I wanted something because of my anxiety and the depression that I had. I wanted tools that were nurturing and nourishing, but also the energy, like I had no energy. And I knew that was that heaviness, that weight was the trauma and was that workplace sort of experience that I needed to heal. But I also lost my beautiful dad in that time of me. So I lost him in 2021 and it was very sudden. And it was another area that I just went. There was a period of time where I just basically I got up, ate, then went back. And I just woke up one day, Jo, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. I need to change my life. I need to I'm here to live life. And I was living a life of misery and suffering. And I just decided one day something needs to change. And I think it takes that pivotal moment in your life. And like we can't help people. It comes down to, I just went, this is it. I'm not living this life anymore. I have to change the way I was living life. And I just gently created habits and just gently did the process. It's taken me about 6 years, but I'm living a very different life. I was so disconnected to life And I look back now and I think I shared that with you, is like I'm 54 years of age next week.
Well, happy birthday for next week.
Thank you. And I've never lived life so fulfilling and so, it's magical. And I want this for everyone.
So you must be really looking forward to, now that you've got these tools for yourself, you're being able to teach others, you must be really looking forward to what's going to be happening in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Because if you're feeling this good now and you're looking after yourself, you know it's going to continue for you. I mean, there's obviously going to be roadblocks and things that are going to give, that's because that's life. Life will still happen, but it must be exciting for you, given what you've come from to what you can be going towards.
It's so exciting, Jo, because I, as I said to you, I was surviving. Now I'm thriving. And I've always had such high values for my health. And I look at this and go, when you're under chronic states of stress and you're in that fight and flight response and you're surviving, and that's where the anxiety, I couldn't have spoken to you the way I am now 2 years ago, 12 months ago. This work has led me to the point where I now have calm. I now have that inner peace. And, it's led me to where this is why I share what I share and want to help women and others, because I know we are living in chronic states of stress. The world is chaotic. It's so fear-based. It's so survival-based. And I believe we're conditioned to believe that's how things have to be.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way at all. I think, well, I'm living proof, and so are you, Jo, that, and I think when I got to my age, I think it was like, well, this is how life has to be. And it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of just deciding, finding the right people who are going to support you and hold you in a space, because that was part of me having mentors. Like, I've had mentors in this process. I've had breathwork facilitators and the right people to support me and hold me in this space. I think that's the secret. So you feel safe. Because I must say, I think with anxiety, and this is one thing I've been very grateful in this process, especially this year, I've actually stood up and shared my story, Jo, for the first time. And I went and spoke at a mental health luncheon back in March, sharing my story and sharing my tools that I've actually used to completely transform my life. Because I think people believe this is just how it has to be. And they have been so transformative. Like, I couldn't get up and speak on a stage like that, or me speak to you today, because I couldn't even leave my home. I had so much crippling anxiety, and then it created physiological impact in my body. So it was the stress, the chronic states of stress and anxiety all relates to your physical health. And people, I think, need to understand that it impacts our physical health, that our emotional and our mental health is part of the physical and the physiological conditions that we develop over time. And if you can go inwards, heal the gut, because the gut then sends signals to the brain, you're safe. It's just rewiring everything and processing and changing that whole, slowing down life, having tools that create balance, calm, and sort of harmony back into your life. You do life differently.
It's amazing how the body can heal too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, spiritually. There's all sorts of components that together, when you find your recipe, and everyone's got an individual recipe, but there are some commonalities that are such powerful modalities like breath work. And, that's the thing. Our breath is always at our disposal. 24/7. Like, we can use that
to tap in.
Yes.
Just to switch you out of, and this is what I love about the breath work. So what I facilitate is a deep 2-hour experience where we're getting into the subconscious mind and altering that sort of, and removing what's trapped in our body. But I also facilitate practices that allow you to move or activate your parasympathetic response. which is your relaxation, because it's about finding a balance. I believe majority of life, people are living in their sympathetic nervous system, that's survival. The phones, your email, you're constantly go, go, go. So our brain is very much taught to be in that survival. And it's having tools to be able to balance and switch us out of that. Like the anxiety at night, I couldn't go to sleep, the insomnia, because I think it's that survival. I was on high alert. So when you have tools that can actually switch you from your fight and flight and into your parasympathetic response, you'll then start into that relaxation mode. You'll start to calm down the body, calm down the mind, because overthinking was a big thing I had as well. And I think that's a common thing for a lot of people, is they can't switch the mind off, that monkey mind. And I know you love meditation as well. And I think where people go, maybe not wrong, but they choose not to do it, is because they think they need to keep their mind quiet. And it's not that.
No, it's not.
And again, that's just resistance, just allow the resistance. And after a period of time, there are days where my mind is constantly going, but I'm still in that deeper state of rest. It's about resting the brain. And it's so powerful.
It is. It's a beautiful modality, you being able to do and have a qualified practitioner like yourself taking you through some breathwork sequences, which I was lucky enough to be at the retreat, and you actually led one. So that was really lovely as well, to be able to be seeing you doing what you love and what you do well.
Yeah, thank you, Jo.
Yeah. So Kirsten, can you tell me, did you ever imagine in those dark days that you would be doing, like would it even have been just a little spark somewhere that you would be doing what you're doing today?
No way. I actually remember telling one of my son's friends who was living with us at the time when I was really unwell. He asked me, would you ever work again? And I said, never. Yeah, I just, I share this purely because people need to hear there's other ways, because I never thought life would be so good. I never, ever understood that life can be so different, Jo. I think that's the thing. Where I've come from to where I am today, just having the calm, the feeling in your body of that calm and peace, I've never experienced that, ever. So my aim is to share this, to give hope to many other people out there that there are practices and modalities that we can tap into that give them hope that they can change it, because it's debilitating, having anxiety or depression or that sense of, not coping with life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kirsten, how did your husband, your family, friends, how do they react to the new version of you? Like, did it surprise them, or what was that? Because the relationship obviously would change because you are a different person now.
Yeah, I'm a very different person, and they see that. And I think it's just, you have a glow about you as well. So when you're feeling so good, it's an internal thing.
Yeah.
Because we're thriving, we're not actually just surviving. So the other thing that I've found is, even with menopause and premenopause, I haven't had hot flushes. I've had none of that. And I understand it's because my nervous system is balanced and it's calm. Because when you're in that survival mode, you're flooding your body with the stress hormones. So that's the thing, is when you can find tools that actually calm your body, you found homeostasis. You're able to switch into, and it's at finding that perfect balance. It's not about being in one or the other. But if you can and sort of tap into something that allows you to move into that parasympathetic response, which is your relaxation response, you actually feel different in your body. So my family, they've loved it, I think. And I've even had them where they're wanting to do the same as me. So I'm modeling to them, and even my beautiful granddaughter who sits and does meditation with me, that's even beautiful, because I'm modeling to them other ways.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been beautiful to witness. And my husband, like he's even he does meditation now, which, I think that's the thing. It's becoming more normal and accepted, whereas it's not such a woo-woo thing anymore.
Mm.
Mm.
Sure. For sure. And it's men and women. And when you look back in the history of meditation, a lot of the meditators in the Eastern world were men leading. So it's not
Yeah.
as though our society, Western society, has made it as though it's women or men who are on the fringe. But my husband learnt meditation with me as well.
Oh,
So,
beautiful.
he's a meditator also. And I think, it's normalizing, seeing for your children and your grandchildren to see this
You're doing
life.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
How
beautiful.
lovely. That is
Yeah.
special. Now, we have women not only from Australia, but from all over the world who listen to this podcast.
Beautiful.
If someone is interested in looking at this and finding a breathwork facilitator, how do you actually find one?
So I think these days social media is really great to be able to connect as well, and even just on the internet but I think it's just finding someone that feels you have a connection with, because it is a sense of vulnerability as well, particularly with breath work. To me, I believe you've got to feel safe, because if you don't actually feel safe with that person, and this is part of my process as well, as I educate the people on what they're going to experience through that process, through that facilitation, because your body does some weird and wonderful things. And why I educate them is trying to remove the fear that your body is moving into altered states of consciousness. You will experience resistance. So you'll experience your mind the first thing is in the mind, that mind resistance, the thoughts, oh, this is dumb, I shouldn't be doing this. When you're breathing actively and we're breathing into that sympathetic nervous system, what happens, people don't understand, and what creates that mind chatter is sometimes the way we breathe. Because a lot of people don't understand just simple breathing techniques can influence or accelerate our anxiety. And it's most people who breathe, I think a lot of us don't know how to breathe correctly.
Very shallow breathing.
We're shallow, we're up in the chest.
Yes.
And we need to sort of come back to learning to breathe into the belly and very low into the belly, and slow down your breath. And even an easy concept of just breathing through, your nose, not your mouth, just a few. And that's what I teach. But what we're doing on purpose is we are breathing through your mouth. So we're accelerating your body. We're actually activating your body on purpose. So you can feel tetany, which is tingliness, and you can feel the hands becoming claw-based. So your body's changing because of the oxygen levels and carbon dioxide levels in the body. So I explain this so that then when they're in that process of breathing, they go, okay, this is normal. Because the more you open up to, this is normal, the deeper you go into your breath work, the deeper you go, the more effect that you're going to have, like the deeper release, because that's what we're there for, is that emotional release. And it's really powerful. So it's sort of on purpose teaching you to educate that that's okay. So I think being safe, finding a facilitator that you feel safe with. So a lot of them are on Instagram. That's where I see a lot of them. And that's basically where I found my two different modalities of breath work and teaching from. So there's plenty of, I think there's a lot out there. It's, again, having that connection. And I wanted to do it as well, Jo, because I feel our generation, they're all very young, which is great. But I think being a little bit maturer, and I feel what I believe is having experienced my own trauma and breakdown and all of that, burnout, you can actually, because you've experienced it, it's easier to hold space for somebody and support them through the process, because I've been through chronic anxiety. I went through post-traumatic stress disorder. I've experienced all those ranges of things. you can then hold space for that person.
Yeah.
I think that's the secret is anyone can go out and do a course. Anyone can go and be a breathwork facilitator or a meditation facilitator. But I think when you've been through a journey of your own and you understand what that person is going through that you're sharing this with, that's the secret, I believe, is having that same similar journey or connection. You can hold space for that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I connected with my first facilitator, is because she had gone through the same process as me. And I thought, well, if she can understand how I feel, I want to be with that. And she was a lot younger than me, but because she had had chronic fatigue syndrome, I just went, right, she knows what I've been through.
Yes.
So it's, again, feeling safe. And that's been a big part of my journey, is feeling safe in my body, because I believe, looking back at all of that, that's what I believe the anxiety for me personally was, never feeling safe.
So apart from your breath work, what other sorts of things do you do as far as supporting your health and wellness in this stage of life?
Yeah, so it's a bit of everything. So I very much in my food as well. I'm very organic. I use everything. My water, drink lots of water. So all areas of my health, I believe, are all part of the process. It's a layered effect. I think it's a whole foundation of having, like, I've detoxed my entire home. I have no chemicals in my home. That's probably the first part where I started with my essential oils. So using oils to support and nurture your body, working on your immune system, hormones, skin, cardiovascular, everything. So muscular, because back in the day and I still do get it, I also do acupuncture as well. My doctor is very holistic, and he's, again, been part of this journey of supporting me through the process. So everything I've done is completely holistic. It's more functional than the conventional way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I did that purely because I've always been that way. Even when I had my own beauty salon, the products that I used were all science-based, but all natural-based products.
Mm-hmm.
So my house cleaning, I don't wear perfume. I've gone toxic-free with all of that. Even skincare, hair care, all of that. Food-wise, I've actually with a beautiful nutritional coach at the moment, who's back in that day and all through my life, really, when I was working such unsustainable hours in my business and then, in those management roles, it's about healing the past of where I was starving my body. And that's all part of that fight and flight. Like, your body's storing fat in areas and you're flooding your body with the adrenaline and cortisol, which actually impacts so many layers, hormonally and everything. So it's very important, I think, as a layered effect. So I'm doing that as well. What else am I doing? Meditation, breath work. I've also got some diversification areas that I wanted to do life differently, that if I wanted to have a week off, we all know what it's like with business, is I wanted to be smarter. I did a whole heap of money mindset work.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 3 different mentors through the last 6 years that have guided me into understanding the money stories and beliefs and the conditioning around that we have to work hard.
Yeah.
So that's why I've gone into diversifying and having assets and things that are actually helping me generate and just relaxing while I'm working, knowing that my nervous system's calm, knowing I've got things working away in the background.
Fantastic. So what are you looking forward to in the future then, Kirsten? What's something or one thing or a couple of things that you might be really looking forward to in the future? Because family is a big one for you.
Yeah, family's a big one. So we're about to head off probably in the next 6 months, caravanning around Australia with our beautiful little families. So our daughter and her husband and 2 grandchildren, we're going to be able to head off around Australia with them. And I've set up my business that I can, because all my mentoring and facilitating is all done via Zoom. And what I've done is through my work, I've set it up where I do all my morning rituals at 11, so I basically don't work from before 11. And I've set it up where my life can be in balance and flow. And I want to teach this and share this with others because it's just rewiring and changing our whole thought concept on how we should be doing life. And I want a life, and I love this, to be able to share it, is having that work-life balance. Because to me, my past was all very much work, 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 work. No life. It was total work because I was conditioned that was the only way I could make money. So it's all about just, thinking very differently, thinking outside the box as to what possibilities that we actually have to create a life of freedom. Mm. So, and this is what I love is, being in communities and sharing and talking to people. So I want to be able to share this. I educate. I've been to workplaces before as well. I've done that in the last 12 months where I've shared these tools with workplaces because I think it's important for people to find tools that are going to support them and nurture their bodies and their mind and their nervous system, because it's all about having that connection. Mm. But having more, I think people need to have more freedom in life and that work-life balance, to have that balance and flow rather than it being hard and hard and hard.
Yeah.
So
you've got lots to look forward to.
Yeah.
It's exciting for you. What advice would you give to another midlife woman?
Just to enjoy life and love life and reach out to people. Don't do it alone. I did it alone for a little while, but I think I needed to find that time alone. But there's so much of life to, it's beautiful really when you find, I think, quieten down, slow down and find that flow and balance back in life. Because that's the thing. I think women don't even know how to do that, to find joy. I think women don't even know how to find that feminine energy, because that's one thing I've really stepped into. I didn't even know what that meant. And that's purely why I've become a mentor and a facilitator, is because there was no one of my age. All my mentors were a lot younger. And I think because we've lived and experienced more in life, we have a lot of wisdom to give and a lot of love to give, because I think you've got to feel that love, felt supported and loved and feel safe. I think that's the thing.
Very true. And as a final wrap-up question, Kirsten, what do you hope 80-year-old Kirsten is going to say about current day Kirsten?
Oh, how proud I am of her to make the choice. And thank goodness she did it.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness she did it, because I think there's a lot of vulnerability in doing this work. I think we're meant to be human and live this human experience of life and be okay with that. I think that's the secret.
Well, Kirsten, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved our conversation we've had together, and I know the words of wisdom that you've given to the other ladies and just sharing your experience so openly is going to help somebody else. So thank you so much.
Beautiful, Jo. Thank you so much as well for having me. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.